Welcome back to EDH on a Budget. I'm your host, Iceman, and today we're going to be going over 5 budget reserved list cards. Yep, that's right, reserved list does have some cheap cards on there that you can play. By cheap, I mean cards under $2 or less, and that's using TCG Player. There were a lot of cards under $5 that were incredibly powerful and playable in the right decks, but for this next few episodes we're going to focus on under $2. First up, we have Null Chamber. Null Chamber is an enchantment for 3 and a white. It costs $1.70. You and target opponent each name any card except a basic land. Those cards cannot be played. So in Commander, where you know there's 4 commanders, you don't even have to look at their hand or know what they're playing. You could just choose probably whoever's in last or second to last and make a deal with them. Hey, I'll pick that one commander, you pick that other player's commander, and that would be typically good enough. It's also a great way to stop really powerful commanders that have powerful cast triggers, can't be countered, powerful ETBs, especially if you're in a non-blue deck. It's harder for those decks to counter and deal with those types of creatures. This will just create like a layer of protection in terms of they can't get their game plan going until this is removed, and if they can't remove it, then you're going to pull ahead while they are stagnant. So it is somewhat stacksy, but definitely doable. And if your commander's already on the battlefield, the risk of them picking your commander is low, because they would then have to remove your commander, and there's many decks that don't even care, like they're just using your commander as for the color identity, and it's not necessarily something needed. So something to keep in mind. Next up, we have an interesting card called Fungus Elemental. It's a creature for 86 cents. It's an elemental, obviously, with 3/3 stats. It says, pay green, sacrifice a forest, put a 2/2 counter on Fungus Elemental. Use this ability only if Fungus Elemental came into play this turn. So this is definitely an odd card for multiple reasons. A, it puts a +2/+2 counter on it itself, and typically that's not done. Usually it's 1/1 counters. So if you were to proliferate this, you would get another 2/2 counter, another 2/2 counter, so it would add up a lot faster that way. There's lots of decks that care about moving counters. I believe Nesting Grounds is a land that can do it. Regardless, this ironically will not fit terribly well into decks that care about +1/+1 counters, because all those cards say whenever +1/+1 counter this or that. So that is interesting. Also to note, this does not say once per turn. The only stipulation is that you pay a green, sacrifice a forest, and only use this ability if it enters the battlefield this turn. So ideally, if you're going to be sacrificing forests, you hopefully give this haste or trample or something. But you could pay that green to sacrifice multiple forests and pay multiple greens to get lots of +2/+2 counters. Could be used in decks that care about graveyards, and obviously you're going to want something with a decent amount of forests, so maybe 1 or 2 colors, 3 tops probably. Next up is another interesting creature called Escaped Shapeshifter. This is $1.17, and it has 3/4 stats. The mana cost is 3 blue. And it says, as long as your opponent controls any creatures with flying, Escaped Shapeshifter gains flying. The same is true for First Strike, Trample, and Protection from any color. So things to note are that flying, First Strike, and Trample are all very common keywords that many cards have in Commander. So the odds of you playing this 5 mana creature and getting nothing is incredibly low. Next thing to recognize is that you're probably going to get more than one of those. I would imagine most games you would get at least 2 or 3, so flying, trample, first strike, 3-4, that's pretty good. But especially in decks that you could pump its power. But giving it protection from any color, if an opponent is a creature with protection from any color, that's pretty darn good. Wizards is putting out more and more cards that will say protection from black or protection from white, whatever. They just pick one color and they tack it on a card. Most of the time it feels like extra, but they're just going to keep doing it more and more, so this card will only get better and better in terms of it gaining protection from colors. And you've got to remember, with reserved lists, these cards are never ever going to be reprinted, so and these are all single, like I don't think none of these have multiple printings, so they printed it once and they're like, nope, we're done, this is it. And you can still play with it in Commander. Next up is Energy Bolt for 27 cents. This is a sorcery for X, red, white. It says Energy Bolt deals X damage to target player, or target player gains X life. So this is kind of interesting in terms of the option to give any player life or take away life from any player. So there's obviously the niche decks that care about opponents gaining life, and because they will have ways to punish them for that. There's lots of red decks that care about damage, so this will just be an interesting way to add to your deck. Next up is another creature. Please like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. It really helps. This creature is called Discordant Spirit for 2 black and a red. It is 63 cents. This is another interesting one because it says at the end of target opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Discordant Spirit for each 1 damage dealt to you this turn. At the end of your turn, remove all these counters from Discordant Spirit. So, and it's got 2/2 stats to start off with. So it's interesting. I don't think there's really any other cards in Magic that do what this does. This can give you so many +1/+1 counters because it doesn't even say that the damage dealt to you has to be from them. It mentions nothing of that. So in decks where you can damage yourself at will, this can get so many +1/+1 counters. You can definitely attack with this before it loses those counters. You can also, if you're damaging yourself at instant speed, it can make a heck of a blocker for the next opponent. You can't do it during that opponent's turn because it's at the end of target opponent's turn. But it wouldn't be very hard if you pick the opponent next to you and you just damage yourself on their turn, so the next opponents wouldn't want to attack into this massive creature. I think a great way to use this would be to move those counters to something else. Black also has lots of cards to bring cards back from the graveyard. Sometimes they care about the power of the creature. Sometimes, and this is something that's going to seem small until it's in play. So it's just very interesting. Like I said, there's no creature that really does what this is doing. So if you want to add a little bit of flair and uniqueness to your decks, keep watching these episodes because we're going to be doing at least a couple more reserved list cards episodes. Thanks for watching.